I first noticed him on a rainy Tuesday evening while flipping through my mother's old photo albums, the ones she kept in the bottom drawer of the living room cabinet, the ones that smelled faintly of dust and something sweet, like dried flowers. And there he was, standing right next to me in a picture from my 8th birthday party, smiling faintly, wearing a navy coat with brass buttons, a man I had never seen before in my life. A man who definitely wasn't there that day, yet looking so solid and natural in the photo. It was as if he had been part of the family forever. At first I thought maybe it was a relative I'd forgotten, some distant cousin or my mother's old friend, but the more I stared the more wrong it felt, because I remembered that birthday vividly. The smell of chocolate frosting, the sticky feel of the balloons, the way my dad had tripped over the coffee table trying to film us. And I knew with absolute certainty there had been no man in a navy coat standing beside me when I blew out the candles. I showed my mother and she frowned, tilting her head as if she too found something strange. But then she shrugged and said it must have been one of your uncle's friends, though she couldn't recall his name. And when I pressed, her answers grew shorter, evasive, like she didn't want to think about it too much. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the rain tapping against the window, my mind replaying the picture over and over. And the more I thought about it, the more details came back. How his shadow in the picture fell at the wrong angle compared to everyone else's. How his eyes seemed to be looking not at the camera, but directly at me, like he knew I'd be studying the photo years later. The next day, I scanned the picture into my laptop, zooming in until the image pixelated, trying to find flaws, signs of editing, anything to prove it wasn't real. But every line, every shadow matched perfectly with the rest of the scene. I almost convinced myself to forget it, to move on. But 3 days later, I was at the grocery store buying milk when I passed the security monitor near the checkout and froze. The man in the navy coat was on the screen, not in front of me, but on the grainy black and white display, walking just behind me in the frozen foods aisle, his face turned slightly toward the camera, wearing the exact same faint smile. I spun around, but the aisle was empty. My heart slammed in my chest as I went back to the monitor, but by then the footage had switched to another camera, and I couldn't be sure if I'd imagined it. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every creak in the apartment, half expecting him to appear at the foot of my bed. By morning, I decided I needed answers, so I went through every old album my mother owned, page by page, and my stomach tightened when I saw him again, in the background of a family picnic when I was 12, sitting on a bench a few feet behind us, wearing the same coat despite the blazing summer sun, his gaze fixed on the camera. Then again, in a Christmas photo from when I was 15, half hidden behind the tree, but still there, watching. It was like he'd been following me my whole life, just far enough away that I'd never noticed until now. I took the photos to a friend of mine, Aaron, who does digital forensics for a living, and he examined them carefully, running them through his software, checking for signs of tampering. But after an hour, he looked at me, pale and uneasy, and said, "These are genuine. If someone faked this, they're better than anyone I've ever seen." I wanted to believe there was some simple explanation, that maybe he was a neighbor or a background extra in life's crowded moments. But the part that rattled me most was that he never seemed to age. The same smooth skin, the same posture, the same faint smile in every shot, whether I was 8 or 25. That weekend, I took my camera everywhere, half hoping, half dreading to catch him in the frame again. And on Sunday afternoon, while sitting in the park, snapping random shots of passing strangers, I caught sight of him. This time in real life, not in a photo, walking along the path toward the fountain, the navy coat dark against the bright spring flowers. My throat went dry. I raised my camera and snapped a photo, my hands shaking, but the moment I lowered it, he was gone. Not walking away, not turning a corner, just gone, as if he'd never been there. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking." My skin prickled as I stared at the message, my fingers suddenly cold. Before I could reply, a second text appeared. "He's not what you think." I glanced around the park, but no one seemed to be watching me, and yet I felt eyes on me, heavy and deliberate. That night, I printed the new photo I'd taken and laid it side by side with the old ones, and the sight of them together made my chest tighten, not because they were identical, but because in the newest one, his faint smile was gone, replaced by something else entirely, something like warning. I didn't tell anyone about the texts, not even Aaron, partly because I didn't want to sound paranoid and partly because deep down I knew this was no longer just about a strange man in old photographs. Something bigger was at play, and whatever it was, it had just noticed that I was noticing it. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the texts, replaying them in my mind while pretending to live normally. But every time I caught my reflection in a shop window or glanced at the darkened screen of my phone, I expected to see him standing somewhere behind me, just out of reach. I started checking the street before leaving my apartment, taking longer routes to work, avoiding the park entirely, yet the feeling didn't go away. One afternoon, while walking home, I passed a pawn shop I'd never noticed before wedged between a laundromat and a shuttered bakery, and something about it pulled me in. The air inside was heavy with dust and the faint metallic tang of old coins, and in the far corner, behind a locked glass case, I saw it. A leather-bound journal with cracked edges and a tarnished brass clasp, its cover embossed with a symbol I didn't recognize, a circle intersected by a diagonal line. The owner, an older man with cloudy eyes, noticed me staring and shuffled over. "You've got a good eye," he said, his voice rasping like dry paper. "Came in last week. No one's been able to open it." I asked where it came from, and his expression tightened. "Estate sale. Belonged to a man who disappeared. Left behind a lot of strange things. I don't know why, but I bought it." The clasp was cold against my skin as I carried it home, and when I set it on my kitchen table, I realized the symbol on the cover looked disturbingly like the pattern stitched into the lining of the navy coat from the photographs. I tried to force it open with a knife, but the clasp wouldn't budge, and when I pressed my ear to it, I swear I heard the faintest ticking, like a distant clock. That night, unable to sleep, I kept the journal beside me on the bed, and sometime around 3 a.m., I woke to a soft clicking sound. I reached for the lamp and froze. The clasp had come undone on its own. Inside, the pages were filled with dense handwriting in black ink, but the words weren't in any language I recognized. Some pages had diagrams, rings of symbols, spirals leading into blackened centers, and tiny drawings of buildings I didn't know but felt I'd seen before. In the margin of one page was a sketch of a man in a navy coat, standing exactly as he had in my birthday photo. Only this time he was surrounded by faint, jagged lines, as if the artist had been trying to capture the idea of static electricity. The moment my eyes touched the drawing, the temperature in the room seemed to drop, and the ticking grew louder. I slammed the book shut, my pulse hammering, and shoved it under the bed, but the sound didn't stop. It seemed to echo inside my head. The next morning Aaron called, his voice tense. "I've been looking deeper into the metadata on those scans you sent me," he said. "There's something wrong. The timestamps are impossible. They show they were taken before the camera model even existed." I told him about the journal and the pawn shop, and he agreed to come over that evening. But as I walked to meet him at the train station, I saw the man in the navy coat again, standing across the street, not moving, just watching. The traffic light changed, people passed between us, and when they cleared, he was gone. Aaron arrived pale and sweating, saying he'd been followed from his office by someone he couldn't quite get a good look at, but whose footsteps matched his exactly. I pulled the journal from under the bed, but when I tried to show him the sketch, it was gone, the page now blank except for faint indentations where the pen had been. Aaron suggested taking the journal to a linguist he knew at the university, but before we could decide, my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "You're opening doors you can't close." Aaron saw it too, and for the first time he didn't try to laugh it off. That night, I dreamed I was standing in the park again, camera in hand, the man in the navy coat walking toward me. Only this time when I raised the camera, the viewfinder showed not the park but a dark, featureless room with a single door, and from behind it came the sound of slow, deliberate breathing. When I woke, my camera was on the floor beside the bed, even though I'd left it in the living room. The battery was dead, but when I charged it and checked the memory card, there was a new photo, grainy, black and white, of that same dark room, the door slightly open, a sliver of light cutting through. Aaron came over again, more agitated than before, saying the linguist had agreed to meet us, but we'd need to bring the journal tomorrow. I almost said yes, but something in me hesitated, a voice in the back of my mind whispering that showing this to anyone else would only make things worse. Still, I agreed, and we set the time. But that night, while I was brushing my teeth, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow. Measured. Stopping right at my door. I froze, toothbrush in hand, then crept to the peephole, and my blood ran cold. He was there, the man in the navy coat, standing so close that his face filled the lens, his expression unreadable. I stumbled back, my heart racing, grabbed my phone to call Aaron, but before I could dial, there was a knock. Just one. Sharp. Then silence. When I looked again, the hallway was empty, but a folded piece of paper lay on the floor outside. I brought it inside with shaking hands and unfolded it. In the center was a single sentence written in the same handwriting as the journal. If you turn the page, you won't come back. I didn't sleep at all that night, the warning on the paper echoing in my mind, every creak in the building making me flinch. At dawn, I stuffed the journal into my backpack, slid the folded note inside one of its pages, and left for the university earlier than planned. The city felt unfamiliar, too quiet, like someone had turned down the volume of the world. Even the traffic seemed muted, the air heavy with anticipation. Aaron met me at the corner by the campus gates, his face drawn and eyes rimmed red. "You look like hell," he said, but his own voice was trembling. We made our way to the linguistics department, climbing the narrow stairs to an office lined with bookshelves that sagged under the weight of old volumes. Dr. Verne was older than I expected, with thin silver hair and sharp, restless eyes. She took the journal in both hands like it was something alive, turning it over before opening to the first page. She didn't ask about the clasp or the paper, only stared at the symbols, her lips moving as if she were trying to pronounce them. "This is not any known language," she said finally. "But it's not random. It's constructed, structured. Whoever wrote this was recording something precise." She flipped to the diagram of the spirals and frowned. This looks like a representation of dimensional topology." Aaron and I exchanged a look, but before we could ask, Dr. Verne continued in a lower voice. "Where did you get this?" I hesitated, but told her about the pawn shop and the man who disappeared. Her expression hardened. "You should have left it there." She pushed the journal back toward me. "There are patterns in here that I've only seen once before." When I pressed her, she told us about a colleague who'd been researching theoretical access points between parallel realities, hypothetical structures where physical and temporal boundaries weaken. He vanished a decade ago, leaving behind sketches and writings that, she claimed, looked disturbingly like these pages. I wanted to ask more, but Dr. Verne suddenly froze, her gaze fixed on the office door. A shadow passed under the gap, slow and deliberate. Then another. Aaron tensed, whispering, "Is that?" We didn't move until the shadows receded down the hall. Dr. Verne shut the journal abruptly and handed it to me. "Go. Now. And whatever you do, don't turn any page you haven't already seen." We left without another word. Outside, the campus felt different, colors sharper, the air colder, as if reality had been thinned somehow. Halfway to the subway, Aaron stopped and said, "We're being followed." I didn't want to look, but when I did, my stomach dropped. The man in the navy coat was 50 feet back, walking at our pace, his eyes locked on mine. We ducked into a crowded coffee shop, sliding into a corner booth where I tried to catch my breath. I opened the journal, flipping to a page I knew I hadn't seen before, ignoring Dr. Verne's warning. The instant my eyes hit the words, the noise of the cafe faded until it was replaced by a faint humming. My vision tunneled, the edges of the page glowing faintly, and for a moment I wasn't in the cafe at all. I was standing in that same dark room from the photograph, the door now open wider, revealing a corridor that stretched into a blinding white light. The humming grew into a roar, and then Aaron's voice yanked me back. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" My hands were shaking, but the page looked normal again, the words just strange ink on paper. I told Aaron what I'd seen, but he didn't laugh. Instead, he said, "Maybe this thing isn't just describing other realities, it's showing them, pulling you into them." His voice dropped lower. "Or maybe it's letting something on the other side see you." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A photo message, no text this time. I opened it, and my throat tightened. It was me and Aaron sitting in the cafe at this exact moment, but taken from a perspective just outside the window. The navy coat man was visible in the reflection of the glass, standing directly behind me. We bolted, leaving our drinks untouched, and didn't stop until we reached my apartment. Inside, I locked every deadbolt and chain, pulling the blinds tight. Aaron sat at the table, flipping the journal closed. "We can't keep this," he said. "We need to get rid of it." But part of me resisted. The drawings, the diagrams, they weren't just random. They felt like a map, maybe even instructions. I told him so, but he just shook his head. Maps lead somewhere, and sometimes you don't want to get there. That night, he crashed on my couch, insisting he didn't want me alone. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the corridor from my vision, the light growing brighter, a figure beginning to emerge. Around 3 a.m., I woke to find the journal open on the table, its pages turning on their own, the sound of paper against paper crisp in the silence. Aaron was gone. My heart pounded as I called his name, checking every room, but the apartment was empty. I grabbed the journal, shouting for him, until I saw it. On a fresh page, a drawing of Aaron standing in the same corridor I'd seen before, his face turned away, his hand reaching toward the light. Below it, in that same looping handwriting, were the words, "He has crossed." I didn't think. I just grabbed my coat and bolted into the street, clutching the journal so tightly my knuckles ached. The city was empty in a way I'd never seen before, as if everyone had decided to stay indoors at the same moment. My breath came out in sharp clouds, every shadow seeming to follow me. Aaron couldn't have gone far, if he'd gone anywhere at all. I told myself he might be outside, maybe chasing the man in the navy coat, maybe just trying to clear his head. But deep down I knew. The way his figure looked in that drawing wasn't just a picture. It was an echo of something real. I made for the only place I thought I might find answers, Dr. Vern's office. The building was dark when I arrived, doors locked, but the side entrance gave way under a firm push. Her office light was on. The desk was empty except for a note in the center, "You're being observed." I spun, heart pounding, certain someone was behind me, but the hall was clear. Then the journal in my hands grew warm, faint vibrations running through its spine. I set it on her desk, watching the pages flicker as if an invisible wind was riffling through them. One stopped on a diagram of concentric circles, lines connecting them like threads. Small notations marked each ring: known, fracture, void. My eyes lingered on a tiny X just beyond the void, and before I could stop myself, my fingers traced it. The room tilted. A high-pitched tone filled my ears. And then I was standing in a place that wasn't Dr. Vern's office. A vast open plain under a bruised purple sky. The ground made of some glassy black stone that reflected my face back at me. In the distance, a single figure walked toward a door standing alone, unattached to any wall. It was Aaron. I shouted his name, but he didn't react. The ground between us shifted like liquid, and the reflection staring back at me was no longer mine. It was the man in the navy coat, smiling faintly. I stumbled back, and just like that, I was in the office again, gasping for breath. My phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. "If you follow, you can't come back." I ignored it and ran. Outside, the city had changed. The buildings were taller, the street names wrong, advertisements flickering in languages I didn't recognize. People passed me without glancing, their faces too symmetrical, their movements slightly off, like bad copies of someone real. Panic clawed at my throat until I spotted the pawn shop. Maybe, I thought, I could return the journal, put it exactly where I found it, undo whatever chain I'd started. But when I pushed open the door, the inside wasn't the same cramped space. It was a corridor, the same one from the photograph, stretching forward until it was swallowed by that blinding light. The air was thick and humming. I felt pulled toward it, the journal growing heavier in my hands. Then footsteps behind me. Dr. Vern's voice cut through the hum. "You shouldn't be here." I turned, but she looked different, her hair darker, her eyes colder. She glanced at the journal. "That doesn't belong to you in this world." My head spun. "This world? What are you talking about?" She stepped closer. "It's an anchor. Every reality it touches starts to bleed. You've already crossed once, and you don't even know it." I told her about Aaron, but she shook her head. "If he's inside, he's made his choice." I couldn't accept that. I pushed past her, clutching the journal, heading deeper into the corridor. The hum grew louder until it was inside my skull, my vision blurring. Behind me, Dr. Vern called out, "Every step you take makes it harder to find your way back." The light ahead swelled, swallowing the walls. And then I was falling, not down, but through, like gravity had been replaced by something stranger. I landed on cold stone, the air heavy with the scent of ozone. Before me was a city in ruins, its towers broken and leaning, the sky lit by two pale suns. In the distance, a figure stood atop a crumbling bridge. It was Aaron, but when he turned, his eyes were pure white, and his voice, when he spoke, wasn't his. "You brought it here," he said, motioning to the journal. "Now it will spread." My knees went weak. "What will?" He smiled, and it was wrong, stretched too wide. "The fracture. The in-between. You've already felt it, haven't you? The moments when the world doesn't fit quite right." Around us, the ground began to split, thin lines of light spilling upward. I backed away, but the journal was pulsing, pages fluttering. From the cracks, shapes began to emerge, tall, thin, shifting like they were made of smoke and glass. Aaron, or the thing wearing him, took a step toward me. "You can leave now if you want. But if you do, this follows. Everywhere." I looked at the shapes, at the impossible sky, at Aaron's face, and I knew there was no choice that didn't cost me something. The journal's clasp snapped shut on its own, the hum vanishing into a silence so deep it hurt. And then I realized I wasn't sure which side I was on anymore. The silence didn't last. It never does. A low vibration seeped through the ground, rattling my bones, the air itself warping as if I was standing inside a heated glass. Aaron, or whatever had taken his form, tilted his head, studying me with the stillness of a predator. "You think you can hold it shut?" His gaze dropped to the journal. "It's older than you, older than this place, older than the first version of your world." I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. The ruined city stretched endlessly in every direction, the cracks in the stone widening with each pulse of light from beneath. The tall, thin shapes were closer now, their movements jagged, as though they didn't quite understand the rules of being solid. "If I destroy it," I said, "what happens?" The thing wearing Aaron's face smiled faintly. "You don't destroy something like this. You can only pass it along, trade the problem for time. But the fracture grows. Always." My hands were shaking, but I forced myself forward, closing the distance between us. "Where's the real Aaron?" He blinked slowly. "Gone. Or maybe he's still here, just not in a way you'd recognize. You brought him into the in-between. It took what it needed." My throat tightened. "Then I'll take him back." The smile faded. "You'd cross again for him? Knowing you'll never see your own world as it was?" The ground beneath us shuddered violently, sending a plume of dust into the twin-sun sky. The shapes now towered over us, their edges cutting through the air like blades. One leaned down, its face, or what passed for one, mere inches from mine. I felt cold radiating from it, a cold so deep it made thought itself slow. I held up the journal like a shield. The shape recoiled slightly, as if recognizing it. The false Aaron's voice dropped to a whisper. "You could end this by walking away. There's a version of you right now back in your apartment, safe, never finding the shop, never meeting me. You could step into her life and forget." My fingers dug into the leather cover. "That's not my life." He regarded me for a long moment, and something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. "Then you already know there's only one way forward." He stepped back, gesturing toward a dark archway at the far edge of the shattered bridge. "The core. Give it back to where it came from. But once it's gone, you can't follow him." My stomach twisted. This was the choice, the journal or Aaron. I took one step toward the archway, then stopped. "If I go to the core, will it stop?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked past me, toward the growing swarm of shapes now filling the cracks in the ground, their bodies bending unnaturally as they slid closer. My heartbeat was a hammer in my chest. I thought of the moment I first saw the photograph, the moment everything began to splinter. How many versions of me had already made this decision? How many had failed? The journal was vibrating again, faster, its pages struggling against the clasp. My grip tightened, and then I ran, not to the archway, but straight at Aaron. He didn't move, didn't even raise a hand as I collided with him, knocking both of us to the ground. The journal flew from my grasp, landing a few feet away. I scrambled for it, but one of the shapes intercepted, its body blotting out the light. I expected it to strike, but instead, it bent down, impossibly slow, and pressed what passed for a hand to the journal's cover. The vibration stopped instantly. Then it straightened, turning its formless head toward me. Something shifted in the air, a current pulling at my chest. I realized, with a sudden lurch, that the pull wasn't toward the archway, it was toward Aaron. His body shuddered once, twice, and then his eyes cleared, the white fading. "What?" he started, voice raw. I grabbed his arm, pulling him to his feet. "No time, we have to go." The shape didn't follow. None of them did. They just stood, watching, as if the journal's silence had changed the rules. The archway loomed ahead, its darkness rippling like water. "Through there," Aaron said, and this time his voice was his own. We ran, the sound of our footsteps swallowed instantly by the black. Cold hit me first, colder than the shape's touch, colder than winter. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't feel the ground beneath my feet. Then light, blinding and sudden. We were in the pawn shop. Just like that. The counter was there, the dusty shelves, the hum of the old refrigerator in the corner. But something was wrong. Outside the window, the street wasn't ours. The cars were different, the buildings taller, the sky tinged with a faint, unnatural green. I turned to Aaron, my voice shaking. "We're not home, are we?" He didn't answer. The journal lay between us on the floor, its clasp broken. Pages fluttered, stopping on one image, a photograph of us, standing exactly where we were now. Only in the picture, neither of us was smiling. Aaron stared at the photograph for a long time, his jaw tight, the flicker of the green-tinged light from outside sliding over his face. "This isn't our world," he finally said, and his voice was low but steady, like he'd already accepted it. I crouched down, my fingers brushing the edge of the journal, half expecting it to burn. It didn't. It just sat there, calm, as if the thing that had been rattling inside it had gone dormant again, or maybe it was just waiting. "Then we go back," I said, though the words felt hollow in my mouth. "We find another way." Aaron's eyes met mine, and for a moment there was something almost relieved in them, as if he'd been waiting for me to say that. But then he shook his head. "You don't get it. This place is better." I looked past him, out the dusty shop window. The cars might have been sleeker, the buildings taller, but I could still see people moving out there. People who looked distracted, faces buried in thin, glowing sheets of glass. And in the distance, a faint, constant hum, like machinery buried under the city. "Better?" I asked. "How do you even know that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped toward the window and pressed his palm against the glass, watching the strangers go by. "Because I remember the other version. I remember what it cost me to stay. And this one, maybe this one didn't have to pay that price." His words landed heavy, and for a second I wasn't sure which of us he was talking about. I bent down, flipping the photograph over, but the back was blank. No date, no handwriting, just the strange weight of being caught in a moment that hadn't happened, or had happened, but not here. "If we stay," I said slowly, "we don't know what changes. We don't even know if we exist here. And if we leave, Aaron cut in, we might never get back to anything we recognize." His tone wasn't sharp, it was matter of fact, like a coin flip we'd been handed without the option to refuse. I looked at the journal again. I could destroy it, tear it apart, burn it, whatever it took. But the image of those shapes came back to me, standing still once the vibrations stopped. It hadn't been fear. It had been permission. The journal wasn't just a key. It was an invitation, and once given, it couldn't be taken back. Aaron stepped away from the window and picked it up, thumbing through the pages. "Do you see this?" He held it out, showing me an image I hadn't noticed before. The pawn shop, empty, the door hanging open to a blinding white light. "It's not here yet," he said, "but it will be." My chest tightened. "You think that's this place ending?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tore the page out and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "If it's coming, maybe we can stop it before it starts." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe there was some version of this where we could finally stop running. But even as I nodded, something deep in me whispered that this was just another loop, another reality folding over itself. I stepped outside first. The air was clean, almost sweet, but it carried that low hum like a heartbeat under the pavement. People glanced at me as they passed, but not in recognition. Just that brief flicker of curiosity before slipping back into their own invisible worlds. Aaron followed, the journal in his hand. "We'll need to find the fracture," he said. "Every place has one. That's where they start." I thought about the green sky, the hum, the way the buildings leaned ever so slightly inward, like the city was holding its breath. And if we can't find it? I asked. He didn't stop walking. Then we wait for it to find us. His words sank into the rhythm of the street, into the hum, into the way the light shifted slightly every time I blinked. The journal felt heavier in his grip than it should have, as if it already knew which of us would end up carrying it next. We turned a corner, and the street stretched ahead in a perfect, unnatural line, the horizon glowing faintly, not like sunset, but like something breaking through. For a moment, I thought about turning back, about finding the pawn shop again and just staying there, pretending it was ours. But I knew I wouldn't, not after what I'd seen. As we walked toward that faint glow, I found myself wondering, not if we'd get home, not if we'd survive, but how many versions of me were out there making this same choice, over and over, in worlds just slightly wrong. And which of us, if any, would finally get it right?